Hi, Bridget Hannon, University of Illinois. I do have a question for Dr. Vasquez. Since you are looking at so many physiologically relevant variable or genetic variants for the metabolism of these blood lipids, are you seeing any SNP or even within gene interactions in your modeling?
Yes, right now we're exploring also those SNP interactions. We're using the Plato and other approach. What we can see is definitely is a huge difference between those who respond to decreased total cholesterol after the diet. They have a more interactions between, and every SNP, every gene that we have, we collected data at least 2 or 3 SNPs, and we can see that more interactions between SNPs in one single gene is having a higher impact in the decrease of total cholesterol compared to those guys who show higher total cholesterol after the intervention, and they don't have that many SNPs together. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Please.
Hi, my name is Kenny Westerman from Tufts. This is also for Dr. Vasquez. How are you thinking about baseline levels of total cholesterol and how you account for that in thinking about whether you're looking at total or sort of direct effects of the SNPs?
Well, the data that we have right now is a clinical trial, and definitely we analyzing the data after the intervention. You know, all the participants go through control phase. You know, they have a control treatment, and then after they have a washout period, and then come back to consume for another 4 weeks a diet high in fat, or for us to be able to analyze the changes in diet in cholesterol from the baseline to the second to the end of the trial. I think once that we complete these models, definitely the baseline of the participants should be considered. There are a couple models that already has been validated that explain that huge difference. Some models of prediction has an impact when the person has high cholesterol. However, when the person has normal cholesterol, the models are not capable to do that prediction as efficient that we were expecting.
Hi, Gwen Coder from UC Davis. I also have a question for Dr. Vasquez. So when you're looking at these functional outcomes, are you considering any effects of genetic regulation and genomic regulation like epigenetics or microRNA, or are there plans to incorporate that in future studies?
It's a good question. I think definitely our team need to expand and bring someone with that capabilities. Probably we can talk after the talk, and maybe I can pick your brain about that part. We also consider, for example, even our models include microbiome, because we understand that not only genetics is the solution for explaining how a person is going to respond after a clinical trial, right? Like we have to incorporate different areas, how microbiome is going to affect this absorption that I can see from my models, right? Like after my research, I can identify genes involved in the transport of those fatty acids in the intestine. But now I have to incorporate that key part about the microbiome if it's going to have an impact in changing that absorption. And of course, the epigenetics, they also is a big question that it will expand our research.
Thank you.
Great. And I think we'll take one more.
Sure. Sue Shapsis, Rutgers University. I wanted to just ask Dr. Hajorath, I'm not sure I'm saying the name correctly, about the weight loss slope and indicating that you didn't really want to look at differences between group of whole amounts, and to explain the weight loss slope a little bit more and why that's more important to examine.
So I'm not sure I got the question. Can you repeat it again?
Well, you emphasized that the weight loss slope is a more interesting way to approach looking at the differences between groups, and I just wanted you to expand upon that and explain why. Yeah. I mean, I could think of a reason why, but why do you think it's better? Is it really different between?
I mean, I think it's important because often in this kind of research, we don't have clear cut points saying whether you belong to, let's say, in my case, the low Prevotellibacterides group or the high one. It's really a continuous variable. So you're often criticized by choosing a specific cutoff. That might be the median in your population, or, I mean, in the case of this, you don't really have any clear cutoff. So you will always be criticized for cutoff That's one thing. The other thing is if it's really truly linear, then it's the best way to describe it, I would say.
Okay, thank you, because no one does that in general, so it's interesting.
No, I mean, we'd like to try to change that bit. I mean, it also goes for what we have just talked about now, genetic risk scores. So you could imagine that composing a lot of different genes, you can't really put up all the different combinations, but it's, I guess, a risk score. So the higher the score, I mean, it might also be continuous. So you could swap with a genetic risk score on the x-axis, and you will be able to look at the results in the same way.
Very good, thank you.
Great. I guess we can take one more.
This is Arashdeep from. Can you hear me? This is Arashdeep from University of Florida. I also have a question for Professor Matz. You mentioned on changes on weight loss and microbiome with whole grains as a dietary fiber increase. But my question is that there could be many other fermentable fibers producing similar responses affecting different classes of microbiome. And depending upon the dose of fiber, could also be producing similar responses. So should we restrict ourselves to whole grain fibers, or should we just start consuming more fermentable or fibers that support our gut microbial health?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, my research come out of a specific study testing what I call a neo-Nordic diet. So that's fiber and whole grain included in this case, a Nordic diet, but what you would expect of, let's say, normal foods. So the research can't come out of this. It might be, I mean, now we are looking at which specific fibers it's really doing this effect, if there's a specific fiber. So we don't have the answer to this, but we hope to come a little bit closer to answering this in the intervention study that we are about to conduct.
Great, thanks.
Great. Thank you very much for the great questions.